Pero kung narinig nyo naman yung sinabi kanina ni Congresswoman Luistro, sinasabi niya kung hindi ko raw ma-explain kung saan galing yung increase ng valuation ng aking kumpanya, galing daw yan sa Pogo. Saan ka naman nakakita ng non-sequitur conclusion? Kung sila ay nagsasabi, tumanggap ako ng pera sa Pogo, sila magpresenta ng kahit anong ebidensya.
Enzo Recto, kalaban ang katiwalian at kasinungalingan, kakampi sa katotohanan at kabutihan.
Matapos patawan ng pagkakulong si Roque ng Kamara dahil sa hindi pagsipot at hindi pagbigay ng kanyang Statement of Assets and Liability or SALN, nanghamon pa itong si Roque na patunayan daw ng Kamara na involved siya sa Pogo. Tila ata dispalinghado ang agrumento nitong si Roque. Paano nga nila mapapatunayan na involved ka sa Pogo kailangan nga makita kung saan galing ang mga bilyong-bilyong mong pera. Doon lang nila makikita kung involved ka talaga sa illegal na Pogo, di ba? Ang tanong na saan ka na? At yung mga papeles na hinihingi ng Kamara? Tila naduduwag ka? Or kaya ka nagtatago ngayon dahil tunay ang akusasyon sa'yo? Anyway, halina't balikan muna natin ang mga sinabi ni Congresswoman Luistro sa hinihingi nitong SALN ni Roque.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As mentioned by the Honorable Paduano, the Quadcom is in possession of the Omnibus Motion and Compliance dated September 9, 2024, filed by Attorney Harry Roque. And I wish to remind the Quadcom that this motion originated from our hearing on August 22, 2024, where in the various questions we propounded, Attorney Harry Roque expressed his commitment to produce the documents. And for the understanding of the Filipino people, Mr. Chair, I wish to share excerpt of the video of our hearing dated August 22, 2024. Secretariat, please.
Comsec?
254 and 255 of the tax code as amended. The state can file a criminal case for tax evasion against any taxpayer who willfully attempts in any manner to evade or defeat payment of any tax imposed by the tax code. Given this legal provision, Mr. Chair, I wish to move, or may I move as well, that we direct the resource speaker to submit his income tax return for 2018 declared in 2019. Mr. Chair, so moved.
There is a motion that the resource person submit a copy of his income tax return for the period 2018.
The supposed income was generated 2018, but I believe, Mr. Chair, that by practice it will be disclosed by 2019 income tax return, filed in 2019.
There is a motion, as clearly stated by Congresswoman Jinky Luistro, to require the resource person to submit income tax return on the period covered. Is there
Mr. Chair?
a second?
Mr. Chair, may I inquire? Because the sale of real estate...
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Congressman Akop.
I think we have a motion to settle
Okay.
before this resource person can speak.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. We will first dispose of the motion and then we will allow Attorney Harry Roque to speak. So there is a motion clearly stated earlier by Congresswoman Jinky Luistro, duly seconded. Are there any objections? Hearing none, the motion is carried. The resource person is required to submit to the committee the documents being asked by Congresswoman Jinky Luistro. Now, Attorney Harry Roque, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to manifest that as far as the sale of the real estate is concerned, it will not be reflected in my income tax because it is subject to final tax. So I will submit the final tax paid for the transaction, Mr. Chair, because at this point, my income tax will be irrelevant to the increase of my assets because it was by reason of sale of real estate subject to final tax. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Attorney Harry Roque.
To explain, Mr. Chair, this omnibus motion and compliance is made up of two parts. The first part is the motion to quash, that is from paragraph 1 to 33. And the second part is the compliance to the show cause order, which is reflected in page 34 to 43. This representation wished to make a manifestation with respect to the motion to quash filed by the Attorney Harry Roque. In support of the above motion, Mr. Chair, he raised the same arguments which have been deliberated upon already during the last hearing. And to satisfy the requirement of due process, Mr. Chair, let me reiterate our answers to the arguments which he raised. First, that the hearing is not in aid of legislation. In answer to that, let me explain, Mr. Chair, this Quadcom was created to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation pertaining to 4 issues which are haunting us. 1 is dangerous drugs, 2 is extrajudicial killing, 3 is the en masse acquisition of land, and 4 is the POGO operation. In other words, Mr. Chair, we are indeed in exercise of our power to conduct inquiry in aid of legislation which is granted by no less than the Philippine Constitution, Mr. Chair. Second, Attorney Harry Roque argued that the documents requested are not germane to the inquiry in aid of legislation. Again, in the case of Arnold versus Nazareno, there are 2 requirements. 1 is materiality to the subject matter, and second is materiality to the possible legislation. With respect to the first requirement, Mr. Chair, it is the humble submission of this representation that the Quad Committee has established an overwhelming circumstantial evidence showing the connection of Attorney Harry Roque to Lucky South Corporation, which is a POGO operator where we apprehended Chinese nationals victims of human trafficking, murder, and internet scam. Mr. Chair, at the height of the interpellation, we ask about the Biancham Corporation, which owns the property in Tuba, Benguet, where the IT employee of this Lucky South was apprehended. And that is where we started investigating Biancham. And then it was followed by our investigation on the subsidiary companies. As we investigate on Biancham, Mr. Chair, we found out the sudden increase of his assets in 2018, coming from 125,000 before 2016. In 2018, the current assets of Biancham rose to 125 million. At the height of the interpellation, Mr. Chair, Attorney Harry Roque articulated that his money did not come from POGO operation. To emphasize, Mr. Chair, that statement did not come from Quadcom, did not come from this representation. Instead, it came from the mouth of Attorney Harry Roque. This is an admission, therefore, Mr. Chair, that he admits the connection of these documents which we are requiring from him from the investigation on POGO operation that we are conducting right now. To further explain, Mr. Chair, it was admitted that he was the presidential spokesperson during that time with a very limited income. And then we asked him, where did this 65 million came from? Where did this money came from? And he could not explain except that he sold a certain property in multinational company in Parañaque. To conclude, Mr. Chair, there is a question about the source of the money of Biancham Corporation, which belongs to Attorney Harry Roque. And following his question, if he will not be able to prove the legal and valid source of this sudden increase of assets of Biancham, then there is a reasonable ground to believe that indeed he is connected with Pogo operation and this money possibly came from the Pogo operation. The second element, Mr. Chair, is the materiality to the possible legislation. And during the last hearing, Mr. Chair, we reiterated ano po ba ang mga batas na posibleng aamyendahan, muling pag-aaralan in connection to this Quadcom hearing. And we cited RA 3019. This is the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act na baka sakali na ang ating mga government officials ay nakorrupt because of this Pogo operation. We also have Code of Professional Responsibility of Government Officials that we need to revisit already the provisions of this law to make sure that the government officials and employees do not deviate from what is being mandated by the Code of Professional Responsibility of Government Officials. We also have anti-money laundering. Kulang po ba ang probisyon ng anti-money laundering? At nagkaroon ng mga transfer ng huge amount of money in spite of the existence of this law. We also have corporation law. Bakit po ba nagagamit na shield ang mga corporation in perpetrating illegal activities? We can also consider, Mr. Chair, the Code of Professional Responsibility and Accountability for lawyers. Ito po ba'y saklaw pa if the lawyers already protecting illegal activities of their client? In addition to this, Mr. Chair, we have established already the need to revisit the laws such as the PSA Charter dahil naabuso po ang ating batas patungkol sa late registration, our immigration law on visa issuance, the PAGCOR Charter on licensing of POGO, and the cybercrime law or RA 10175. Mr. Chair, to proceed, another argument that was raised is the right to self-incrimination. And I wish to share again the case of De La Cruz versus People. Napakaliwanag po sa batas na ito. When we speak about the right against self-incrimination, we're talking only about testimonial evidence. And this time, Mr. Chair, what we are asking are documents. The documents which he promised to produce during the hearing of August 22, 2024. Fourth, Mr. Chair, he invoked the right to privacy. And again, in the case of Standard Chartered Bank versus Senate Committee, citing the case of Sabio versus Gordon, the right to privacy is subordinated to the right to public information in matters of public interest. In other words, Mr. Chair, if there is a conflict between the right to privacy versus the right to public information on matters of public interest, the latter should prevail. Mas mataas po ang right to public information on matters of public interest kumpara sa right to privacy. And finally, Mr. Chair, he invoked the right to due process. This is the purpose of our hearing, to give ample opportunity to our resource speaker to explain their side. We satisfy amply the requirement of notice and even the requirement of hearing. But we are all witnesses. He has been dispensing his opportunity to be able to explain before the Quad all the possible allegations which are being imputed by this investigation. Mr. Chair, I wish to add as well, as part of this manifestation, that when he filed the motion to quash, prior to the receipt of the written subpoena, wala pa pong written subpoena na tinatanggap si Attorney Harry Roque. Nag-file na siya ng motion to quash. Why? Because he knows already during the meeting that he expressed his commitment to produce the documents. Reason why we issued the subpoena. To my humble opinion, Mr. Chair, he waived already his right to receive the written subpoena. Second, Mr. Chair, during the last hearing, we extensively discussed his arguments and our answers why we denied his first motion to quash. And third, Mr. Chair, in this motion, omnibus motion and compliance, siya po mismo ang nagsabi. Same arguments ang ni-raise niya. As a matter of fact, he said he is refiling the motion to quash. In other words, Mr. Chair, lahat po ng nakasulat dito ay nasagot na natin during the last hearing. I therefore submit, Mr. Chair, that we should deny this omnibus motion, particularly the motion to quash, because this is already moot and academic. I submit, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Congresswoman Luistro.
Mr. Chair, stating
yes.
the grounds why we are in the right as far as our request for him to submit these documents and his continued refusal to submit these documents to this Quad Committee, Mr. Chair. I move, Mr. Chair, that we hold Harry Roque in contempt, Attorney Harry Roque in contempt for refusing to submit the documents subject of the subpoena duces tecum, and of which he has manifested that he was going to submit to this committee, Mr. Chair. I so move, Mr. Chair.
Pagkatapos patawa ng pagkakulong itong si Roque, nagkaroon ng interview itong si Roque at dito nagsabi siya na ito ay isa lamang pamumulitika. At gusto lang siyang ipakulong talaga dahil siya raw ang naglabas ng polvoronic video ni Marcos Jr. Kaya daw ginagawa nila ito. At nanghamon nga po siya sa mga ito na patunayan na involved siya sa illegal na pogo. Para po sa mga iba pang pinagsasabi nitong si Roque, panoorin po natin ito.
Second contempt daw, and then from our understanding parang may bagong arrest order to detain you.
Hindi na ako nagtataka dyan, no? Kasi alam nyo, dati naman akong galing dyan sa kamera. Ang sinabi sa akin ng mga matatali kong kaibigan dyan, talagang pupuruhan ako, hindi lang dahil ako talaga ay, kumbaga, kaalyado ng mga Duterte. Kung hindi, ang sabi daw ni Speaker Romualdez, ako daw ang responsable doon sa bangag na video, yung pulvoronic video na ipinalabas ni Maharlika. Ang nakapagtataka, bakit nila ako pagsususpetsahan, samantalang si Maharlika naman ang dating loyalista talaga ng mga Marcoses, no? At dahil siya ay napakalapit na loyalista nung nakaraan, natural lang na marami siyang mga puting ahas na magbibigay ng mga ganyang ebidensya gaya ng pulvoronic video. Pero yan ang talagang nakalap ko na katotohanan na talagang hindi ako tatantanan dahil yan ay parusa dahil doon sa kanilang paghihinala na ako daw ang responsable doon sa pulvoronic video. Pero malinaw naman sa tingin ko sa buong bayan na ang nangyayari dito sa Quadcom ay hindi investigasyon. Ito isang witch hunt. Ito isang kangaroo court. Mula nang binuo nila ito, ang kanilang pakay lang ay sirain ng mga Duterte at ang kanilang mga alyado. At ako na nga yung alyadong yun, no? Dahil dalawa na kami hindi Duterte na pinupuruhan dyan, si Man Scarpio na asawa ni VP Sara at ako. No? Pero malinaw din na meron ng desisyon ng Korte Suprema, no? Lalong-lalo na doon sa kaso ng Bengzon versus Senate Blue Ribbon Committee, no? Na dapat ang mga bagay-bagay na itinatanong, ang mga dokumentong hinihingi ng isang investigasyon ng Kamara at ng Senado ay meron kaugnayan naman sa iniimbestigahan. Ang iniimbestigahan dito, Pogo. Ano naman ang kinalaman ng mga personal record sa Pogo na yan? Samantalang, yung aming family corporation na Biancham, binuo yan 2014 pa, wala pa sa Pilipinas ang mga Pogo, no? At yung mga karamihan ng ari-arian na kino-question kung saan nanggaling, nabili yan bago pa dumating sa Pilipinas yung Lucky South. Unang punto yan. Pangalawang punto, sinabi na nga ni Cassandra Ong, wala akong kinalaman sa Lucky South, na yan naman talaga aking sinasabi sa mulat mula pa, no? So dapat doon pa lang, end of investigation na. Pero kung narinig nyo naman yung sinabi kanina ni Congresswoman Luistro, sinasabi niya kung hindi ko raw ma-explain kung saan galing yung increase ng valuation ng aking kumpanya, galing daw yan sa Pogo. Saan ka naman nakakita ng non-sequitur conclusion? Kung sila ay nagsasabi, tumanggap ako ng pera sa Pogo, sila magpresenta ng kahit anong ebidensya. So malinaw po talaga yan, na sa mulat-mula, talagang ang gusto nila, ipakulong ako ng ipakulong dahil nga pinaparusahan ako dahil sa kanilang paghinala na may kinalaman ako dun sa pulvoronic video na yan.
Yan po mga kabunyog, narinig po natin ang agrumento ni Roque. Ang Kamara pa daw ang maglabas ng ebidensya na nagpapatunay na involved talaga itong si Roque sa Pogo. Nasaan ba ang utak nito? Kaya ka nga hinihinga ng statement of asset and liability para malaman kung saan galing ang iyong mga yaman at income. Bakit ayaw mong ipakita? Isa na nga itong oportunidad para sa'yo, para mapatunayan na wala ka talagang kinalaman sa Pogo. Isa yan sa magpapatunay na wala kang kasalanan, pero ano ginawa mo, nagtago ka at hindi mo ibinigay ang hinihingi ng Kamara, Dahil siguro, guilty ka at baka mabunyag ang pagkaka-involve mo sa Pogo, di ba? Kaya corner ka na wag ka nang magpalusot pa at magyabang, lumutang ka na lang at harapin ang asunto sa'yo.
May kulanong salita na ang ibig sabihin dito ay ang pagkakaisa. Bunyog Party List. Halika na, Bunyog Party List ka na. Halika na, Bunyog Party List ka na.
Sa susunod, ang atinang suportahan, Bunyog Party List, nagtataguyod ng katotohanan, lumalaban para sa bayan.